welcome to the stage best-selling author, storyteller, and resilience expert Shaka Senghor and interdisciplinary artist Tiff Massey.
Hello, you all incredible human beings. Thank you all for joining us. So we're gonna dive right into this. I am beyond honored to get this opportunity to facilitate a conversation with one of the most brilliant, incredible, dope, amazing artists, human beings, woman, queen, all the things. And I can't wait for you all to get a chance and opportunity to really explore this journey that this incredible woman, Tiff, has been on. So, Tiff, I'm super excited to jump off into your incredible work and your experience and all things Detroit and art. How are you today?
I'm good. What up, though? I mean, we could do better than that, yo. So when I say what up, though, y'all gotta say, what up, though?
What up, though? So, Tiff, I would love to just dive right in. You have been such a profound and incredible, voice for artists in Detroit and beyond. What has your experience been like, and what has brought you to this journey, to this moment, and what are you excited about?
Whoa, that's like loaded question. It's been a hell of a journey, let's just say. Being an artist, you gotta live, eat, and breathe this shit. Nobody's coming to save you. These galleries ain't coming to save you. I did all of this without gallery representation. To be clear, a lot of people do not get to this main stage without a different type of alley-oop to the bag, So just being persistent has been definitely trying and challenging, just going through the process. But I can definitely say that I've taken like large leaps, like every year is exponentially bigger than the next one. And what I'm doing right now is flying a plane and building it at the same time. So I feel like I'm trying to catch up with myself. So it's kind of hard to, put into words what all of this actually feels like, because it's still ongoing. I don't think there's a place in Detroit now where I can go where nobody knows my name. So it's just, just trying to get used to with the level of, people can recognize me and then they know what I've been doing. They know what my life's work is now, and so the world is catching up with me. I'm trying to catch up with the world. So it's just like a cyclical situation. But you asked me what I'm excited about, and I'm just really excited about what's next. And I think, I need a little bit of time to study myself. I had almost 300,000 people come to my exhibition that has been up for a year. I'm the youngest artist to ever exhibit.
I think we should applaud for that. That's incredible.
Thank you. I'm the youngest artist to have a solo exhibition at the DIA. And I'm from Detroit, so
Yeah.
Only made sense to name the exhibition 7 Mile, Illinois, where I grew up, what made me, essentially.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the journey for people who are really getting familiarized with your work, the origin story of taking you back. Like, when did you first recognize that art was something that lived in you and that you would be doing moving forward? Or was there a moment where you even recognized, like, this is something I really wanted to pursue and do? And we're seeing some of your early work. So what has that journey been like?
Well, I have a bachelor's of science. I was going to be a veterinarian. I've always loved animals. And I think during that journey of just learning formulas and, quantitative analysis and organic chemistry, I would take metalsmithing classes. And that origin started in high school. So that's where I was first introduced to the torch. And so I just fell in love with metal, the materiality, just learning about different processes. So like, yes, I can make swords and, flatware and raise bowls and do all of the things. I was really consumed with process and materiality. And then all this comes because my dad and my mom liked to stunt. Like, they would get custom jewelry made, so it all comes from a place. I just didn't know that, later on that I would actually be, making my own jewelry, So there's years where I've just sold jewelry at the Ann Arbor art fairs. And it wasn't until I was graduating with my bachelor's of science that I was like, okay, what's going on with this jewelry? So I wanted to, because I was totally obsessed with Jacob the jeweler at the time, because he was making everybody's, classic signature chains that's representing a set. And, I was obsessed with it, but I just felt like, it just wasn't enough, just because, they're not necessarily classically trained metalsmiths. They are jewelers. They do production, and so I wanted to immerse myself in that arena, but it's just so limiting, and I didn't want to make the same thing over and over again for the population of the world. It was one of a kinds, and one of a kinds is rooted just growing up in Detroit. Nobody wants you to have on the same outfit as them. So how original are we gonna be when we step outside? You better not have on my outfit when we go to the club, or my same fur or whatever, And so that's, where the originality or just, not wanting to repeat myself started. But what we're seeing is a breadth of work that is started before. Well, this is my grad work. When I was a student at Cranbrook Academy of Art studying metalsmithing, I was the first Black woman to graduate from the metals department in 2011. So it's just all of these things have been, shaping my contemporary practice, which is not just about building, sculptures or objects. It's about building community and, what is Black space and what is Black design and what do we deserve, essentially.
No, that's incredible, because it makes me think about the impact that a city like Detroit has on artists. And I would love to just kind of explore. You talked a little bit earlier about your parents and their adornment, and we got a chance to sit yesterday and really talk deeply about, the idea of adornment as art. And then you talk about something which, all Detroiters, we always are talking smack and having fun about that originality. How much has the history of the city, which some people in this room may not be familiar with, I know, at least for me, when I'm moving about in the world and I'm able to talk about the birth of techno, I'm able to talk about how the auto industry has influenced not just the city, but the world. I think back to Motown and just the aesthetic, this clean cut, Chris Soups movements. How much of that has influenced your work, and what is it about the city that you feel breathes through the voices of other artists in the city?
Well, I feel okay, so in my art practice, I talk about Detroit quite often, and I think, really, I had to. They kept asking my white colleagues who've never lived in Detroit about their perspective. They're making work about a city that they never lived in. And so it was almost like I have to. I'm like, what are y'all even talking about? You've never been, So when I was a student at Cranbrook, it was the Trinity was you would leave Bloomfield Hills, you would go to the DIA, you would go to MoCat, and you would just come right back. So what in the hell would you really know? And then there was only 3 Black people on campus, so what are we really talking about? So basically you're appropriating narratives, and then, it was an urgency. Well, interestingly enough, one of the artists in residence was telling people to stay away from Detroit and to be fearful because, she described it as one of my students being very, very blonde, went into one of the neighborhoods and they probably was like, what the hell is you doing? Because we ain't never seen you over here, and what are you doing with the structures of these houses? And so I think one thing to note is whatever you think is abandoned is not. Whatever you think is available is not. And people live here. And so, a lot of people think that there's a lot of activism with this, but no, like somebody actually has to tell the truth. So a lot of the times when people say you're an artist, it's like, yes, that's an aspect of it, but I really think that I'm a truth teller.
Yeah, I love hearing that. When I think about some of the narratives around Detroit, the more kind of global narratives, right? It's like, oh, here's a city that's kind of reemerging, rebirth, and I know that isn't the experience that native Detroiters have. We're like, we've always been here. We've always been creating.
And had a good ass fucking time.
Facts.
I mean, a time, okay? Like even the things that, there's things that are missing, that y'all will never even get to experience. Like the strip at Belle Isle. I mean, like, oh my goodness, they shut that shit down quick as hell. It was like one day we could walk over here on the side close to the water past 10, and then the next day it was a wrap. Like you can't take your boo close to the water if you're just trying to, it's a whole thing, family reunions and things like this, like shit was just getting taken away, you know what I'm saying? And that's half of our joy, like Belle Isle is a family member, it's not a destination,
Absolutely. So it's really interesting to be having this experience here in Detroit. Summit, I've been a part of the Summit community for about 10 years, and I've always found it fascinating, inspiring, contradictory, hypocritical, all the things that make up, community.
The world.
And so when I first heard that they was doing it here in Detroit, I got excited, one, just because I could get a chance to come home and spend time with my people and my family, and then I got concerned about the narratives.
Same.
And I can't tell you how many times people have asked me, where's 8 Mile at? Which is one of the most unnerving questions of all. But the reason that I bring that to the forefront of this conversation is because so much about what you've established in your art is place-based and intentionality around community that you come from, being incorporated into the creative design. Why was that so important to you to make the distinction between 7 Mile and Illinois versus what people have become obsessed with around this idea of 8 Mile and Eminem?
Oh, yuck. So I think half of it is because, 8 Mile is not even a real place. It's a baseline. It's a road, It is literally a dividing line from, Black Detroit and where everyone escaped from Detroit, essentially. And so, to have a movie and to have like, oh my God, 8 Mile is like, well, you claiming nothing, really, to where like 7 Mile and Livernois, so I needed to name my exhibition something that was gonna reach Black Detroiters, period. Like, I didn't wanna talk to people who go to the museums, like y'all gonna go anyway, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to talk to people who might not have felt invited into the space, who've never walked up those stairs. The last time that they've been into that space was probably like a field trip when they was 8, and some of that work is still in that same position when they was 8. So there hasn't been like a lot of change and growth, and so, I wanted to talk about where I'm from, my origin story. This is the largest exhibition that I've had in my hometown, and I needed to put on for the city, so it definitely, minks, Cadillacs, what are these, signifiers of adornment that I've seen, my whole life. Even in these historic homes, they're the glass doorknobs, it's just like all of these things that I don't think that when people think of Detroit, the pejorative, they don't think about the opulence. And so we bad as hell, and y'all know it. And I think the world knows it. Anybody who's in, fashion or models or musicians, 9 times out of 10, their hairstylists have grown up in Detroit or been influenced in Detroit. Buffs, I mean, Cartier Buffs, that's Detroit. I mean, Stank Pink Gators, my Detroit players, that is a Detroit reference all day because of the Detroiters being in New York, you know? And so it's like this level of swag, you know, that is just going everywhere, but we don't necessarily get the credit for it, just like techno. You know, UNESCO designation is in Berlin. That's crazy as hell, you know? So it's just things like that, you know?
Yeah, that's really great. So being here, it's always interesting anytime we're talking about the impact of art in the world, and we're inviting people into our space, and there's things that, you know, we're sharing. So there's been some conversations here. One recently was Dan Gilbert. Some of you may have seen that conversation with Dan Gilbert and a partner of mine, Brad Keywell. And the subject matter of Detroit's rebirth came up, and like who has access to it, who doesn't, the role that arts, culture plays into that space. And interesting enough, me sitting here right now, I see people who have contributed when it wasn't cool. I see my guy Bryce here. We used to be literally downtown when nobody was downtown, and the Chorus of Fame, who some of y'all heard about yesterday. And now, as a city that is going through this very interesting phase of redevelopment, et cetera, where do you see artists and organic Detroit artists fitting in, or where do you see people trying to fit in around what we've already established here?
Well, I think they're trying to come and take it, actually. I don't think it's about us fitting in at all. And so being that Detroiters are resilient as fuck, we gonna hold, you know, we're all ambassadors and we be damned. So just know that. We're not going down easy. But like at the end of the day, you know, everybody wants to be a damn Detroiter now. Everybody wants to be an artist. Everybody wants to paint and do something. You know, everybody wants to, you know, be a part of the idyllic, what it looks like to be an artist. But like the real shit is, it's hard to get space. And so how do you talk about, you know, the longevity of artists, the creative economy that everybody would love to exploit and put pretty pictures and shit on buildings? But are y'all really supporting the practice of these artists that are like making your shit look good? So if I have all of these accolades and I am having the hardest time with space, or as I'm having the hardest time with space because of zoning, or how quickly I'm growing, I can't even imagine what the future artists are going through. And so there's a lot of, you know, developers that are trying to figure out how to get this small housing tax to try to utilize artists, you know, to get these coins. Like the thing is that, you know, I've been watching the narratives. I've been watching who, you know, they interview for these narratives. I've been watching, you know, who the city gave land to. You know, I've been looking at, you know, where the money came from to develop. So, I mean, I'm not a normal artist, if I'm telling you all that, you know. So I don't know. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Unless the city of Detroit actually recognizes, you know, how important we are to the future of this city.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think y'all should give a round of applause for that, the importance of artists. So I want to pivot a little bit into more of the personal experience with art and you as a human being. You know, as also a fellow artist, I'm a writer. I find just the immense joy when I'm creating. And a lot of that joy is being in collaboration and sharing ideas and tossing things around. What is your experience like with your own work? And do you find it joyful, toyful? Like what is that experience like for you?
I think the joy it comes from, okay, checks. I mean, yo, like, let's be real, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a commission-based artist, so if you got a check for me, then I can explore new ways of making things, you know? And it'll help me, you know, have longevity, and I won't have to work as hard, possibly the next year, but you never know, depending on how long these commissions take. I do very much so like, the designing process, coming up with a new idea. Like, I'm not a one-trick pony, as you can see through the images. I never wanted to be a Rothko painting that same damn boring square in different colors. So, I think it's about exploring materiality, new tooling and things like that. It's like I have a temporary space in the new lab building in Corktown, and I mean, just having access to all of these machines that could possibly build a car or an airplane. And that might be next, because I already think big. So yeah, I mean, just really not putting limitations on, my art practice, checks, and the ability to dream.
I really appreciate you calling out the importance of checks. I don't think enough artists do that. Especially when you're talking about fine arts and things of that nature. There's some type of weird association with the money part of the business, which I find interesting. I was thinking about this the other day where I was doing some editing, and I was thinking about Basquiat and like how much his pieces sell for now that he's dead. And these pieces go for 20, 30 million easily. And I'm sure when he died, he probably hadn't seen 3 million in his account. And so I think that is problematic for artists. And I think we're in a space where there's opportunity for people to buy, purchase, invest in artists in a meaningful way. So thank you so much for calling that out. It's super important. Welcome to Detroit, the Renaissance city. Do you still see Detroit as a Renaissance city, or has the Renaissance happened and a new thing is happening?
Well, it's interesting, and so I have this in a slideshow because I was invited to represent Detroit, and Detroit was the city that was representing the nation in Lilith 3000. And I'm just like, I don't even think anybody in Detroit knew that we went deep over there, I think I was either the only Black artist that I saw, and that was exhibiting. And so they wanted to draw parallels because the exhibition was held in an abandoned train station. And I'm like, honey, this ain't abandoned. Y'all got lights, water, and shit. Like, what? Like, y'all, like, the abandonment of industry in Europe is very interesting, especially the juxtaposition of what happens here, in America. So, we went over there, we took over this train station, and that's when I started to think about installation specifically. And so the walls were Black. These images, here's some of the images. And I think this was the second mural that I painted that I said, you know what, we're gonna let the muralists do what they do, and I don't wanna have anything to do with it. But that mural is about like the flight returning back to Detroit, and all of there's masks that are appearing and the birds are flying over, our Renaissance building. But they were really trying hard to draw parallels, and there wasn't. But I'm happy to participate, essentially, to put on for my city anytime. If you gon' give me the coins, I'm gonna show out. Y'all wanna put on a show? Holla at your girl.
Yeah, I love it. So we have a group of interesting people. We try to do things that's very interactive and participatory. So if anybody has any questions they would like to call out, please feel free. Say your name and,
My name's Joe, and I'm here. I grew up in Grosse Pointe. Grosse Pointe North High School is on 8 Mile.
Okay.
Right? Like, I try to remind people of that. I live in Ann Arbor now. I'm not from Detroit, even though that's what I told people growing up. The thing I'd love to hear, and I'd love for you to share more with audiences, I struggle, and it's meta for me, right, to explain this disconnect between what everyone here is seeing as Detroit right now, and how beautiful these buildings are, and we have great restaurants and bars, but the very obvious lack of participation more broadly in the community. I personally struggle with how to explain that to people or how to educate people on that. I'd just like to hear any advice or any narrative you have in mind that helps really bring that point to home.
I mean, really, it's just showing people. I mean, you could talk about it all day. And so I think It wasn't until I did a residency with New Inc., Idea City, and the first city was Detroit, and we went on a tour of Detroit, and I was like, oh my fucking God, like, yo, it's the curated lens, right, that basically is coming up with these narratives, and I'm like, dude, we could go ride by the hood all day and circle that bitch, but that's not Detroit, you know? I mean, it's like, we got opulence, we got money, shit, damn. We got the architecture, we ain't living in no little cribs and no shacks and shit, you know? We riding dubs, like, I just like, it's just interesting, like, you know what I'm saying? But if we're having, you know, summit in the middle, I mean, this is a curated situation. I mean, it's kind of similar to me to, you know, what Mark Zuckerberg did in Menlo Park. And so, you know, one of my first large commissions, I was commissioned by Facebook. And so it was interesting to see a city built in the middle of nowhere. See, the thing is that this ain't in the middle of nowhere, and he built that shit in the middle of a city where people were living and thriving. And I remember being at a Shabbat dinner one time, and this is actually what got me invested in Detroit. And I was talking to the rabbi, and I was like, look at, you know, what Dan Gilbert is doing, you know, like, look, you know. And I think it was probably during that time where he had this ad that was talking about the Detroit that you want to see, and it was nothing but white faces on the buildings, right? And she told me, well, he owns it. And I said, oh, bitch. But that's true. He does own it. He can do whatever the fuck he wants to, regardless if we like it or not. And so that's actually what got me into, you know, investing into my community. So it's one thing about Detroit, like, it's one thing to be invested, but we need people who are vested. You need to believe in this shit. Like, we need, you know, more people who think differently. Yes, we don't need all of the same things, but now we're getting a lot of the same shit, and it's boring, and it don't have no essence, and, you know, the only thing that's culturally relevant is the hip hop that's being played, you know, in these restaurants. So I just feel like, you know, there's more work to be done outside of you can buy something and you have a vision. You know, maybe that vision works, you know, for your town, but that doesn't necessarily work everywhere else. And so, you know, I don't think development has to be that challenging. You can actually create something that the damn neighborhood wants and still make money.
That's great, great. I want to actually add on to your question, because you asked a question that I think is one that kind of went over people's head, right? And it's something that as Black people we often get tasked with, is trying to help you figure out how to tell stories. And I don't think the answer ever really gets you know, answered in a very honest way. To me, it's all about just you lean into your humanity, and you stop expecting that other people can coach you or teach you in how to tell a story about what it means to be human and to recognize disparities when you observe them. Like, we all have that capability, we all have that capacity. The thing that's lacking is that we don't all have the courage. And so to shirk that responsibility on artists who are already struggling with telling narratives to put resources in their pockets so that they can continue to be artists, to me is super problematic and extreme in terms of a lack of accountability or responsibility for what you are capable of doing. So thank you for the question. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes, sir, Bryce.
So, 1, 2, there we go. This is me, Tiff. I'm gonna ask you to respond to this prompt that I'm gonna give. And the prompt is based on the opening plenary. Shaka just spoke on it. Him and his partner and Dan were in conversation. There were a lot of people in that audience that it was clear to me this is their first time hearing any narrative about Detroit. And there was a lot of what it appeared to be uncritical consumption of the narrative. In particular, this point of narrative that developers like a Dan have been in right relationship with art, culture, legacy Detroiters, such to the point that the seeming resurgence or renaissance of art in Detroit is actually a developer-led strategy, and that there is this positive relationship between major white development and indigenous talent. I'm talking about like the way that the narrative was coming off as if these relationships are actually rendering equity at the very least, and at the most ownership on any level. Can you just speak to your lived experience as one of our preeminent 21st century artists, cultural producers, community builders? Can you just give your narrative on, just speak to that shit, please.
Oh, Bryce. Well, okay. Well, it's false. I mean, no amount of money that you have, unless you're tapped into the pulse, which means that you actually have to be out in these streets and talk to people. If you're not doing that, there is no connection. Just because you got money, or you can sell artwork to your friends and create what is seemingly like a successful experience, doesn't still mean that you're tapped in. And I think what's so interesting about Detroit right now is like we don't really have a lot of galleries that are participating on, like in these fairs or at levels to where a lot of the talent deserves, right? And so being that we don't have a lot of that, it's a lot of gatekeeping. A lot of people shop at Cranbrook Academy of Art. They do. That's my alma mater. We talented, but some of the shit is bad, But if you're connected and you're quiet, then you might get some coins. But I mean, I think it's like anybody can build, like I just said, like Mark Zuckerberg built, Facebook world headquarters in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing popping over there, right? And it's amazing. It looks like, Disney World with no rides. And I still see some of that level of energy. And so like if you have command of the space and you have the network and influence to go talk to other museums and curators or whatever, then you can validate a system easy, right? Coins is paying for validation. But that doesn't mean that it's particularly authentic. I do think it is crazy as hell for Dan to say that the level of development is what is bringing the energy of Detroit's art scene out. We have been here this entire time. It's just people have figured out how to exploit the system or give us space to place work, right? If we want to talk about what alternatives would be like, or how to make that a successful thing, if somebody in here is like, oh, I want a gallery, oh, I want to do something, it's like, why don't you tap in and talk to the talent or people? It's not like we're hidden. You can Google all the dope Black artists in Detroit or, artists of color. It's like we're not hidden. They're just not reaching out to us. And so I think, if we're talking about we're gatekeeping coins, we're only putting it with our friends. And so then we're going to get a limited view and limited perspective always. And I mean, all of these things have inspired my art practice and is why I am purchasing the land. I mean, somebody needs to look like us, who cares about us, who actually is an artist, you know what I'm saying, to go through that experience, to be able to say like, hey, my biggest thing is, I hate that a lot of the art practices are beholden to developers, and so yesterday's price of Detroit is not today's price. And so a lot of people are really shocked at, when I talk about price points of things, we have, buildings that are 10,000 square feet that are like $1 million that still need a full rehab, and so like, what is that? Oh, you got to put another meal into it? Then you might as well go to New York or something, at least you have an industry that's built in. And so our industry is not built in, but we hustle like a motherfucker here, and we're talented here. And there's a level of authenticity that is here, and that's why we've been dope, and that's why we always gonna be dope.
Great. So, 7 Mile, Illinois, are we gonna see a video here, or are we just gonna talk about?
Yeah, I mean, so we were just basically like talking about it a little bit, and so, when I was approached by the DIA to put it on this exhibition, they asked me, if I wanted to do it, if I was interested. And I said, yes, and I mean, they asked for a reason, because it's not like, everybody's reputation who has an institution or a developer has the best reputation in Detroit. There's a lot of work to do when, these institutions are following this old rubric, and a lot of people don't want to get out of these old ways of working. So they asked me to respond to their permanent collection, and I chose Donald Judd and Louise Nevelson to basically have an art battle with, essentially. So you can go to the next slide that I think is like the video, which is like a promo for the exhibition, and it's my song too. Yeah. What up? And now just looking back on this, I'm wild as hell for doing this at the DIA. Like, I mean, this is the blackest shit ever. No, I mean, you thinking I'm about to drop an album. But, it just needed to have like the essence of how I grew up, what Detroit is, like, you know what I'm saying? And that is how I grew up. My dad rode Cadillacs. My dad and my mom had furs, custom jewelry made. We had a jeweler, and so I think it's very interesting that, my whole entire practice my life's work is dedicated to adornment and Black design.
That's beautiful. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I would love for you to just talk a little bit about.
Let's go to the closing.
Yeah.
Can we go to the video at the end?
Yeah. Next video.
Yeah, I don't think, one, I had no idea the level of impact that this work would have on Detroit. And so, I mean, it crossed generations, to just, there's little kids who still get their hair done with these barrettes and things like that. And, grandmothers who've done their daughter's hair and they're going to the museum. I did tell everybody on the last day to bring your whole family and pull up on me. And that is exactly what they did. Can you play the video? Yeah. And this is a closing.
So in closing, Tiff, where can people find you at? Where can they commission your work at? And then where can they see your work currently exhibited?
Okay, I'm on IG, Tiff_Massey. I just unveiled a new piece in San Francisco. It will be on view until November. The exhibition is called Black Gold Stories Untold. It is about the Black experience during the gold rush. It is installed in a historic site that was built, it's a fortress, to protect San Francisco during the gold rush. It was really like Nook if you book. You should see the amount of cannons that was in this place. Just the harsh conditions, that these people had to live through, and it was, just about the Buffalo Soldiers and just all these untold stories. And so it just made sense that, me coming from a jewelry background, that I was a part of that exhibition. So that's up till November. I plan on doing some activations in Detroit and building out a permanent space, because that has been really the response, is that people did not want the exhibition to close. They wanted it to stay permanent. And that's how it just resonated with people. And so I'm studying myself, and I'm gonna build a permanent Tiff Massey sculpture park on the west side.
And then lastly, I don't want, how do people commission your work? Do they find you through IG and just connect there, or
Info
website?
at tiffmassey.com. Y'all let me know what y'all want. I got you. I'm open.
Yeah. Well, again, Tiff Massey, Detroit legend, artist, dope human being. Thank you all for attending. Have fun in Detroit. We're happy to have y'all and looking forward to sharing more time and space with y'all. So peace, y'all.